What up and welcome to Something by Brian. I'm Brian and one of my favorite directors just made a new movie, so of course I went and saw it and I'ma talk about it. So, Edgar Wright has made 4 of my 10 all-time favorite movies. You're welcome to see if you can guess which in the comments below, but I'd guess it would be fair to say I'm biased when speaking of the absolute cinematic wizard that is Edgar Wright and his films. So please downplay everything I'm about to say. I've been known to oversell Baby Driver, for example, as if that sort of thing is even possible. Anyways, the story of Last Night in Soho is simultaneously convoluted and somehow straightforward. It reads a bit like a Nolan-esque movie with its time jumps and somewhat unreliable narrative, but it never reaches the same pretentious feeling some of Nolan's narratives can produce. Okay, so allow me to try and recap without spoiling the film. Eloise Turner is a young aspiring designer who's just been accepted at UAL, so she's relocating from Cornwall in the British countryside to London to study fashion on a scholarship. She's very gifted but feels out of touch with her peers and spends much of her time dreaming about the glamorous 60s. She finds a flat since dorm life wasn't for her, and here she starts to experience the most captivating, vivid dreams transporting her to that exact period. From here, a mystery unfolds that consumes more and more of her waking hours as well, and before Eloise knows it, she's in far too deep, blinded by the neon signs of the ugly city beneath. Thomas and Mackenzie dropped out of Top Gun Maverick to star in this movie as Eloise. As of recording this, I haven't seen the Top Gun sequel, but I'd still argue she made the right choice. She's magnificent in this role. She perfectly portrays the quiet countryside girl intimidated and enamored by London, and her transformation throughout the movie is believable and engaging to watch. Her timid performance makes you feel protective of her, as the other characters in the movie tend to, and when bad things happen, it just hits that much harder. Wonderful casting choice and wonderful performance. Anya-Taylor Joy co-stars as the mysterious Sandy, the girl Eloise visits in the 60s in her dreams. She's a powerhouse. Her confidence is feasible. Her introduction is one of the cooler character introductions I've seen in a while, and a lesser actress wouldn't have been able to command that sort of presence. The funny thing about the two very different characters and performers is that I've never considered the two similar in appearance, but as Eloise gets more smitten with Sandy and her life, she takes on more and more of her characteristics and mannerisms, and sometimes the two truly becomes interchangeable in appearance and performance, and I'm not sure if that is due to the actresses, the costume and makeup department, the director, or the editing, but it is so fun to watch. The two lead actresses are accompanied by a wonderful cast of colorful characters. As Edgar Wright has done many times before, some Bond alumni are present with the sadly last appearances of both Diana Rigg and Margaret Nolan, two former Bond girls who both are very enjoyable to watch in this movie. Terence Stamp has a fun role to play in this, and it is apparent he had fun with it. And Matt Smith is also trying to steal every scene he's in, and he comes close at times. Sadly for him, he's often opposed Anya-Taylor Joy or Thomas and Mackenzie, but he can definitely hold his own and is a very suave presence in this film. Michael Ayao is a new name for me, but he's very good in this film. I'm very happy that his character exists. I truly needed that, and I'm interested in seeing what projects he'll be doing next. As mentioned, this is an Edgar Wright film, and it is very apparent even though it doesn't have his traditional look necessarily, but it does have his snappy editing and humorous dialogue and just immaculate direction. The dancing scene that introduces both Anya-Taylor Joy's Sandy and Matt Smith's Jack is so impressive to watch. I can't even begin to fathom how they pull that off so seamlessly and fluently. It looked absolutely stunning and effortless. I'm so interested in seeing behind the scenes stuff from this movie, just to hopefully understand what was practically done with body doubles and twin actors and impeccable choreography and timing, and what was done with digital effects. The final result is something to be very proud of. I wouldn't be surprised if that scene will be studied and dissected by many aspiring movie makers in the future. I've talked plenty about that one scene now, and I think I could at least highlight 3 to 5 more scenes like that, but then we'd enter into spoiler territory and I'm not interested in that. But the production on this movie overall is just stellar. I've visited London a couple of times, and this movie just nails the hectic feeling of the bustling city. However, I've never seen it in the 60s, but dang, if it looked half as beautiful as depicted in this, I'd be down with spending some nights in the glow of those neon signs. I know nothing about fashion, but the costumes were beautiful, both in the present day and the 60s. I liked how Eloise even found inspiration for her fashion studies in her flashbacks. It was a great way to tie the two things together and further showcase how affected and inspired by that era she was. The editing was some of the best ever and really made the scares hit harder. It isn't quite as stylistically edited as Baby Driver, but however, at times it appears very similar in its snappy edits that also sometimes followed the swinging 60s tunes. It was by far the editing that delivered most of the horror too, particularly a very well done jump scare. Maybe the only one in the film actually. Speaking of the horror, this is Edgar Wright's first foray into proper horror. And while it isn't as scary as, for example, Ari Aster's Hereditary or as action-heavy as James Wan's recent Malignant, it is definitely more akin to those movies than to Shaun of the Dead. This is not a comedy or satire or deconstruction of the genre. It is a scary thriller with actual horror elements, and some of them are done very, very well, and some are a bit less so. But the psychological aspect of this horror is pretty nasty. The fear of going home, going to sleep, not having anywhere to turn to relax is very frightening and done really well. I'm not sure I've seen insomnia-like conditions portrayed as interestingly and horribly as this since David Fincher's Fight Club. In both movies, it isn't the main focus or issue, but it's ever-present and relentless. And it's just a really creepy vibe to sit through. I absolutely loved it. Also, the helplessness Eloise experienced as a passenger in the increasingly unnerving dream flashbacks was perfectly done and a nice way to show that the past is the past, whether you like it or not. Not much to do about it. And also a nice way to show her that the decade she dreamed of maybe isn't all it's made up to be, and that every time period has its ups and downs. A fun take on nostalgia and how it can skew your own perception of a thing. As stated up top, Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors ever, and this is definitely a great watch. As his movies usually do, it isn't performing super well in the cinemas, but that's not a reflection on its story or production or the sort. It is a beautifully told, intriguing horror mystery with wonderful performances from some of the most interesting young actresses in the business right now, so you should definitely go check it out. It is worth the trip to the cinema, if that is possible in your part of the world, of course. It isn't worth risking yours or people close to your safety. But the soundtrack is wonderful on a big system, and the look of this movie really does belong on the silver screen. Wonderful color grading and production overall. I can't wait to see it again. I'm going to go through it frame by frame and see how many times they switch between Anya-Taylor Joy and Thomasin McKenzie. I caught a couple while watching it, but I'm sure I missed some. Anyways, I think that's all I have to say for now without spoiling it. So if you liked the drawing, consider liking the video, and if you liked the video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Next video will be another Team C's related thing, and then I suppose it is time for Christmas stuff. Until next time, take care.